ambulance.
You're where?
At the ambulance house.
Oh.
We were supposed to meet yesterday, so I switched my ambulance night from yesterday to today, and then we changed it back after I'd already switched, so I couldn't.
I saw the mask and I'm like, wow, she's really wearing a mask at home too.
Yeah.
Really,
It's really being safe.
Very efficient.
Yeah.
All right. I think a couple more people from the waiting room I'm letting in. We are recording live and streaming, live for everybody. And see, I've got a couple more people here. We do have quorum, so let me just let the group that's in the waiting room in, and then we'll get started.
Todd and Cheryl,
Uh-oh.
Hey, Todd and Cheryl, it might be going in and out.
Okay. I see. I got you on Cheryl's iPhone. So, all right. Okay. So, make sure we. Okay. One more person in the waiting room. All right. So, why don't we go ahead and I'll call the meeting to order for the Region 9 Board of Education special meeting on September 3rd, calling to order at 5:32 p.m. And just for roll call, we've got Todd, Cheryl, Juliet, Mike. I didn't see Gwen yet. Karen's on, Mary Lee, and Maureen. And Dr. Penn, Mike Santangeli, and Dr. Harrison. So the only board member I don't see Gwen on yet. I'm just looking through the panels here and over in the. Okay. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started since we do have quorum. So the first order of business is public comment. So we do have a few members of the public on. We've got about 21 people total on the call, a few members of the public. So for the members of the public, if you would like to comment, if you could please limit your comments to about 2 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record. And if you're on the Zoom call with video, if you want to either wave your hand or use the hands up signal, we'll call on you. If you're on your phone, I think *6 to unmute and *9 to raise your hand. And I see Lisa waving her hand, so I will call on you first. And you're muted, so if you want to go ahead and unmute, Lisa, and set to go. You should be unmuted. There you go.
There we go.
Great.
All right. So, hello, Board of Education members, and thank you for your service to our community. My name is Lisa Barron. I live at 9 Danbeard Lane in Reading. I wrote to you all earlier this week, and I'm speaking tonight in hopes that our discussion will shed some positive light on the topic of student, somebody else just bleeped in, of student eligibility to play sports while being a remote learner. When I briefly spoke with Mr. Santangeli last week, he indicated that the final decision has not been made yet. So I wanted to speak up as a parent of 2 Joel Barlow students and athletes. I understand that the general policy during the regular school year is that if a child cannot make it to school during the day due to illness or some other circumstance, that they're not eligible to play their sport that day after school. And I don't disagree. However, I'm sure that we can all agree that this is about as far from a regular school year as one can get. And in this exceptional learning year, it's appropriate to consider some exceptions to our general rules, including the rule governing daily eligibility for sports. I have 2 students who have elected to work remotely this year. They are both healthy and want to stay that way, and being conservative in choosing to stay home and attend school via distance learning. We have all seen stories, I'm sure, about schools and colleges opening, having, infestations of COVID-19 outbreaks, and closing down and doing remote. In fact, my son is in college in Connecticut and is doing remote learning now because of COVID-19. My 2 girls decided to do a little research and read some articles, listened to news, and they both decided they didn't want to be part of the statistic. With that said, Learning remotely is a state educational option for attending public schools this year. And they both will be in school each day, every day. Their attendance will be tracked. They will be logged in every day on time in their classes, live synchronous learning at home. They will be participating in the classrooms. They will be doing work daily, handing in assignments, just like the kids who are physically in the classroom. Maybe more because I'll be watching. If, however, they are not logged in or miss their classes, then they should not participate that day because they would have been marked absent. I just cannot see why they should be eliminated completely from sports eligibility because they have decided to learn remotely. They will be in school from a distance. Choosing to be as safe as possible during the day should not preclude them from playing their respective sports and proudly representing their high school. To do so seems a bit short-sighted, maybe punitive, and could be construed even as discriminatory. Not allowing distance learning to participate in their school sport is sort of the beginning of a slippery slope. Along this line of thought, are you suggesting that the 3 days that hybrid students are actually not in school in person, they shouldn't be eligible as well? What about weekends? No one is in school. Are those freebie days? Are we barred from playing those days? What about co-op teams where kids come from other districts and play with our kids? What about magnet school students who attend in a different school which may have different rules? Frankly, and as an aside, I don't understand why anyone would mandate kids be in person learning in this unique year of school in order to play sports. The only real examples that we have of sports being played and avoiding a virus outbreak with any success are the NBA and the NHL, and they're playing in bubbles. In other words, they're doing everything that needs to be done every day online and doing nothing in person except for playing their sport. That has kept all involved healthy. Maybe the thought process should be sort of a bubble for our students. Maybe athletes in their season should be required to be attending school via distance learning to keep all the rest of the general school population safe from being exposed to anything that the athletes may be exposed to on the fields. We all want our kids to be safe, and there are many ways to look at our possibilities here for sure. Honestly, I feel like, you know, I see this as an opportunity for us to choose a path of inclusivity and positivity or a route of punitive exclusion. And I say, let's take the positive path. I genuinely hope that we can all come together in the belief that all of our kids should have the right to play sports and represent their high school and still be a proud part of their teams, which are so important to kids. There should be.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Did I go over?
Yeah, a little bit over. Just go ahead. Please wrap it up. Thank you.
I was just wanting to encourage that also the numbers of kids on our team, some of our teams are small. And if you eliminate kids who would participate, you might hurt the actual viability of some of our teams. We want to keep our teams at full strength, keep our kids active and engaged, and keep the learning going, whichever option we choose. And I'd be proud to be part of that positive, inclusive community.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. All right. Anyone else from the public like to speak? I see Amy and Dan. So let me get you
Hi.
there. Hi. Go ahead, and if you don't mind, name and address. And
yes, I am Amy Arnold of the Amy and Dan and 17 Earth Drive. And I didn't think I would be commenting on anything at a board meeting before school actually started, but here I am. So thank you all for being here, and I will keep my comments short because I believe a lot of what Lisa has already said. And aside from my scientific backed reasoning that outdoor activities are safer than indoor, which is why I will allow my child to participate in cross country and not go to school, I believe that there needs to be consistency in the application of rules. The only reason to allow the participation of children on their hybrid virtual days and not allow 5-day virtual learners to participate is to introduce a punitive consequence to full-time virtual learners. I don't think that was the intention, hopefully. Very much hoping that. So I think you have to apply the rules the same. So if you're not in school on your, 3 off days, even though you're there 2 days, if that's the rules for some children, it has to be the rules for all children. And I don't see why anyone would, want that to be the case. That's really, would be the end of sports this season. So I hope you take into account my thoughts. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Amy. All right. Anyone else from the community would like to speak? And if board members can help me scan for hands or thumbs up signals. All right. That looks like about everyone. I don't see anyone else. All right. So we'll close out that item. Thank you for those that did speak up. We appreciate that and giving your comments to us. Board member comment is item 3 on the agenda. So any members of the board with any comments? Is it Mike? I think you're unmuted. Go ahead, Mike.
I would just like to welcome Dr. Harrison to his first Region 9 meeting. I know I watched the Reading board meeting the other night, and I would echo their warning that tonight will be a very short meeting, but they are not the norm. We often go into the wee hours of the night, very late, but we very much appreciate having you here and look forward to a long and successful tenure. And so thank you and welcome.
Great. Thank you. And second that, I think, as well. I think all the board members, I saw everybody shaking heads and clapping. So welcome. And yeah, we moved it earlier. Doesn't mean we're going much later. So, and we will try to wrap up because we know there is a public speaker on mental health issues and starting back that we want to make sure everybody can get to. So any other board members, any other comments? No? All right, then we'll move on to item 4, discussion and possible action. The first item, JBEA agreement. So I'll start this out, and then maybe members of the negotiating committee can chime in. But we've been working, the negotiations committee has discussion with the Barlow Education Association, been very good collegial conversation with them in several meetings, trying to get to a memo of agreement on reopening and items related to COVID and safety for students. So we've come to an agreement, and I apologize to the board members that I just sent the draft out to about an hour or so ago. You've not had a lot of time to read it. But it is the version that was agreed with the board and with the JBA, with all the comments and everything in it. So again, apology for the short notice for the rest of the board members not on the committee to read it. I'll pause there. I'll let any of the other committee members, if there's anything they'd like to say. We would need a motion at some point to, if we're inclined to agree with the memo, the MOA, so the board chair myself can sign it. So we'll ultimately need to get to that point. But I'll pause for a minute and let any of the other negotiation committee members from the board speak. Maureen?
I just want to say that I think that this is a fair agreement, that it was negotiated over a number of sessions and that we were, to a certain extent, crafting an agreement about issues we had never considered before. So that's part of it. So when you read it, you need to read it with a recognition that these are new areas for all of us, the JBEA and us as well. And it does represent a very fair agreement. That's it.
Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, so again, I just want to rephrase. We have a consensus amongst the bargaining team members from both sides. But it has not been approved by either side at this point. And so I agree with what Maureen said. With this was a very challenging discussion, relating to issues, as Maureen stated, that nobody really thought that we would ever, be addressing before we entered this pandemic. But my preference would be to consider tabling approval pending, I would prefer to table authorizing the board chair to sign pending ratification or approval by the association. I have great reluctance to, and I think it's a dangerous precedent to negotiate publicly. And so I think that best practice would be to have it approved by the association. And then unfortunately, I know nobody wants, but we would need to have another meeting in order to authorize the board chair to sign. So that is my preference.
Sure, I know you're, I don't know if you're in a place that you can talk. I know you're on your phone. I don't know if you had any other comments as the other negotiating committee, and then I'll just open it up to the other board members.
Yeah, I don't know if can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I might be dialing in a bit after I comment. Yeah, I think to Maureen's point, I do agree that it was a fair discussion, fair output, and to the rest of the board, we did consult with counsel throughout, and the external counsel, and they advised on various revisions as we went on during the negotiations process. Mike, I'd be interested in your comment with respect to the voting by the JBEA prior to the board voting. Is that typical precedent from both primarily from a legal perspective that council concur with that, and B, I guess, is that common practice for the district and in general?
Right. So I don't know whether Todd consulted with council. I would tell you that is it has been past practice of the board, and the reason being is because once we give authorization or approve of the document, it is a public document, and therefore, if there are any changes that are made as we move forward or whatever, we're basically negotiating publicly. Everything that's in the document can be disclosed. And so it's normally best practice to, negotiate and have it authorized by each side, and then it becomes public rather than to have it public during the process.
What would and again, these were just general questions I have, what would be the practical considerations of potentially not having both sides approve it prior to school starting?
Well, they don't have an MOA in place before the reality is obviously teachers are working, they're in the buildings, but there are no students at this point. So many of the challenges associated with the agreement relate directly to the environment when it is heavily populated. So it's a different type environment, obviously, than what they're working in now. And obviously our preference would have been to have had this in place prior to the start of the school year, prior to students coming. But again, I'm reluctant because of the timing and the way that that things have proceeded, that we don't have approval by the association at this point, that I'm apprehensive of ratifying it or authorizing it, because like I said, then it becomes public.
Thanks.
Right, and I guess just to be clear for the public, the the teacher's main contract, the CBA, is still in place. So they do have a contract. This is, again, just memo of agreement on how we'll operate, with COVID protocols, with the distance learning, video streaming, recording, PPE, all that kind of stuff. This is just additional agreements on top of that regular contract that they have in place.
Yeah. Factors associated with the change in the delivery of instructions and the practices in the building related to COVID.
So other board members, any other thoughts or comments? And again, sorry, go ahead, Gwen. You can unmute. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, practically speaking, do we have a timeline on when the association is set to vote on this, or are we in it because we're running up onto a holiday weekend, and if we're going to meet again, we have to notice it.
Yes.
And we need to get them in the building Tuesday morning with kids. So do we have the business days to do that?
Well, tomorrow, I believe, is when the association will look to vote on it from their side. So then that, obviously, either we have to do it at end of day tomorrow, over the weekend, or Monday, unfortunately, or first thing Tuesday. Doesn't give us a lot of time. And we do have to notice it as a public meeting on our side for another special meeting.
It would appear that probably Tuesday morning would be the earliest.
Yeah,
Right.
if we notify, put a notification out tomorrow for Tuesday morning or something.
Right.
Do you foresee that there would be substantial changes to it, or this is just merely like a formality?
Well, and again, you would hope that there are not, but you really don't know until it's approved. As we stated in the beginning, there's consensus amongst the bargaining members from each team. So you would think that that it would be approved, but you don't know until it is.
And do we feel, are the staff going to go in Tuesday morning if we have not approved this yet? Do we think that they'll be concerned about the couple hours of lag time between when they're in the building and when this gets approved? Because if not, I would say that's probably what we need to do, is meet first thing Tuesday morning.
Yeah. Again, I can't speak for them. I can just confirm that the negotiating team for the board has made every effort to be available, whenever we could. I mean, we are, trying to do everything we can to make this happen before the start of before students enter the building. We have had numerous meetings and moved our, shifted our work schedules around, whatever necessary, just to be able to make sure that we can move this thing forward. So there has been a great effort on behalf of the negotiating team to be available and to move this thing forward as fast as we could.
All right, any other board member comments, discussion? So again, I think we need, I don't know if we need if we're going to move forward for having the chair sign, we'll need a motion for that. If we're going to wait and table and we don't need anything, and we'll look to get another special meeting scheduled as soon as we can. So I'm looking really for the board, how you guys want to proceed here. Maureen, go ahead.
The question for Mike: is there no procedure by which we can not publish the document and have a conditional acceptance based on the board members being aware of the contents of the document?
No, once we approve or authorize the document, it's a public document.
Okay, I just needed clarification. Thank you.
Well, Maureen, you maybe think of another question. So that public document might get the sense of it's foiable, right? Or is there a requirement?
Yes, once it's public, it's definitely foiable.
But is there a requirement to post?
I don't know.
I don't know that we have to post it before it's ratified by both sides, but I do know that it's a public document once the board approves it.
Yeah, we'd probably post after it's signed to have the final document up there, but yeah, it is discoverable at that point. All right, so
I'll move to that the board approve the MOA as presented.
all right, so we have a motion for the board to approve and for the chairperson to sign on behalf of the board, or just approve the MOA.
Oh, and for the chair to sign on behalf of the board.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion from Cheryl. Do we have a second for anyone?
I'll second it, Karen.
Second, Karen. Okay, thank you.
I have a question for Cheryl in that you don't share Mike's concern here. You think that even if it is public, it's fine? I don't know. Is there a reason?
I mean, I think it's not that I don't have a concern. I do appreciate Mike's concern. I think my concern is more of an operational one and a communicative messaging one, right? So in terms of, I thought that the negotiations that, as Todd had said earlier, I thought they were cordial. I thought they were very respectful. We did spend a collective lot of time. And I don't necessarily want to delay prior to, a delay that could go past school starting to be perceived as something else that it really isn't, right? It's just a timing issue in terms of trying to get the collective votes on both sides to push this through. So I'm more concerned about, Maureen, about the message that it's sending. But, I do respect Mike's view in terms of, now we're exposing a document that could change. I mean, that's a very fair point.
Yeah, well, I think that keeping it confidential until they've had a chance to vote on it also protects them, because if they come up with some, internal disagreement or what have you, that might not be something that they would want to be publicly discussed either. So I don't know if it's necessarily just for our benefit to keep it confidential until everyone has signed off. But I'm just sort of thinking this through now for the first time because I was not on that committee. Yay.
We had fun. You should come next time.
We actually
I'll come next time.
And we have another chance, some more negotiations to do. All right, any other board member comments on the motion?
I mean, we'll say, I was just raising a question. Can we, even though it's a public holiday, again, I don't want to commit if people are not comfortable with, can we meet on Monday before school starts? Is that actually allowed because it's a holiday?
The meeting has to be publicly posted 24 hours in advance, and it can't be posted on the holiday.
So if it's posted tomorrow?
But if it's posted tomorrow, then it gives us till Monday and we can vote on Monday.
Or even Saturday morning.
Yeah.
I'm fine with voting tomorrow or Saturday or Monday.
I think we don't have time
Can't do a vote tomorrow, but
Tomorrow would be better for me.
Yeah, again, I guess I would yield to all of you. Typically, public meetings are held at times when public can attend, and it's not generally great practice to hold public meetings on.
But this is just
weekend.
to finalize a document that's already been agreed upon. So
It's
and these are extraordinary circumstances. We're not setting a precedent by this meeting for having, weekend or holiday session.
I agree. And it's also a meeting that, like, some of us may be attending on our phones from a recreational area or something, and the public would have the ability to do that as well. And hopefully it will be very short meeting.
Again, that's decision of the chair, and if that, that's fine. I
definitely understand, the urgency when we want to get this done, and we can try to to meet either later tomorrow or over the weekend or even Monday. I'm happy to do that as long as we can get quorum.
Todd, then in order to table it, do we have to rescind the motion?
Either rescind it or not vote for the motion, either way.
I mean, it sounds like there's consensus to meet again, so subsequent to the JDE vote, so I'll rescind my motion.
Okay.
Second.
All right, so then, and Karen, you're okay. So we'll pull the motion then from the table. And then I know, again, other board members didn't have too much time since the document came out just a couple hours ago. But any other concerns? Otherwise, I think, like the negotiating committee members have said, we're comfortable with everything in there through the discussions as it's written right now. So again, after the JBA finishes, I think the meeting would be a short formality meeting, as long as nothing's really changed there in the document.
And we don't need administration for this meeting.
No, I don't think it's
If it ended up
necessary.
being first thing Monday or Tuesday morning, I feel like Gina's probably not available.
I'm
going out on a limb. I don't have her schedule, but
I don't think so. I think again, it's just a formality for the full board to approve it and authorizing the chair to sign it.
Yeah.
So I don't think we would need.
Yeah, and so to that point, I think administrators in general always have the open invitation that you are welcome to come to the meetings, but they generally are not obligated. However, I would advise the chair to inform Dr. Harrison that if he does not wish to attend, that he's excused, because I do believe that his contract says that he will be at all meetings. And so unless the chair gives him the discretion, so I would encourage you to give him the discretion, because I don't know that unless he wants to be there, Dr. Harrison.
I'm sure we will work that out. I'm sure he's got a full calendar as well coming up through Tuesday. All right. So I think with that, then we can go ahead and close out this topic, and I'll go back to the JBA and let them know, what if they aren't on or watching afterwards, that we'll do another special meeting to authorize to sign.
Right. And for clarity, sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I believe, and committee members can speak for themselves, I think the 4 negotiating committee members are confident that this is a good deal, a good agreement, and that we would recommend to the full board that, this is something that we're all in favor of. And,
No question.
And so, because I think that's important, because this is procedural, and we're doing this based on, best practice. This is not to express any reluctance in any aspects of the deal.
Yes. Yeah, I would second that.
Yeah, so I would as well.
Okay. All right. All right. So I'll go ahead and close out this item then, and we'll move on to item B for the 2020-2021 reopening plan considerations for athletics and extracurricular activities. And Dr. Penn or Mike, I don't know if you would like to do any opening. Sorry, Dr. Harrison would like. Thank you. So I have to watch all the windows here and see who's raising their hand to start. So, Dr. Harrison, would you like to start us off on this topic?
I would be happy to.
Thank you.
First, I want to say good evening to everyone. I've enjoyed sitting silently through so many meetings, so I've been looking forward to have something to talk about, and here it is. I want to just take a moment and say thanks to our administration at the high school for all of their discussion and thought through this whole piece with athletics. There's a couple of things that I want to do just during this discussion. One is just to talk a little bit about about sort of where we are with the CIAC. There's been a lot of discussion across the state related to athletics and CIAC guidelines. There was a period where there were some questions about discrepancies between the CIAC direction and recommendations from the Department of Health. And as you know, we've been using the term fluid to describe these situations a lot. And this situation with athletics has been more fluid than most of the guidance that we've been getting throughout the summer as far as reopening schools. As recent as today, we superintendents got some clearer information from CIAC, just letting us know informally that we can anticipate CIAC's direction and guidance moving forward to be in line with the Department of Public Health, which I will say from a superintendent standpoint, that was very, very important, that we want to make sure that we are following all of the health guidelines. I've asked Mike if he would just share a little bit of an update just about where we are with CIAC. But I also want to talk about this second piece related to students who are temporarily learning from home and their eligibility to participate in athletics and extracurricular activities. So we had some great conversations about this, and you know, I was able to talk with Dr. Penn at length just about their attendance policy. I want to just take a step back and talk about the why that the attendance policy is in place. With all of our student athletes, we recognize that they are students first. And so we want there to be this clear commitment to their academic progress and growth, and then their athletic participation secondly. And one way to do that is to be present in school where learning happens. Well, as Lisa pointed out during public comment, the place where learning happens has changed. So it's not just in the building, but learning is also happening virtually. And so in talking with Dr. Penn and Mr. Santangeli, some of our conversations has been around, is there a way for us to uphold the attendance practices at the school related to athletics by ensuring that students are present for learning in order to participate, while still recognizing this very unusual environment where some students are learning in person and some students are learning at home. And we felt like that was a good practice to continue moving forward. And that would allow our students who are temporarily learning from home to participate in athletics. I think that we want to be careful, as was already mentioned, that the decision to volunteer to learn from home is not, that we're not responding as administration to that decision by a family punitively. And so that those students are still students in good standing in our buildings and in our schools, and we want them to have the same opportunities as students whose families are choosing for them to learn in person. And so that was what our conversation was, kind of leading up to this. And you know, from a superintendent standpoint, in thinking about what are the practices that are happening at the school that I want to stand behind and really support, and I think that this is one of them, that we could I could simultaneously support their beliefs around student attendance and the importance of that, while also allowing for our students who are temporarily learning from home to still have that outlet of participating in athletics. So that is kind of a summary of our discussion. And it was a lengthy discussion because we really wanted to make sure that we were teasing out all of the pieces, looking at this from multiple perspectives and thinking about kind of the uniqueness of this environment that we are all finding ourselves in as the year is getting started. Just before I toss it over to Mike to talk a little bit more specifically about where we are with CIAC guidelines, one of the things that I did prior to today's meeting was just to look at what do we say in our reopening plans or our reentry plans, in relationship to athletics. And what we say in that plan that was approved by the board, and I watched that meeting, so I know that there was some discussion there, was that the board agreed that administration should follow the direction of CIAC. Now, in this sort of odd period where it was questionable of whether or not CIAC was going to be in conflict with the Department of Public Health, I was wondering, would I need to come back to make a recommendation that we amend that plan and ask for the board to then approve the revised version of that, where we would say we are not following CIAC guidance and rather choosing to follow Department of Public Health guidance. But because there is that alignment between the two, and that's what we're expecting going forward, I feel comfortable not making a recommendation to do any amendments to the existing reentry plan that has already been approved. And so with that, I'll toss it over to Mike to give a little bit more details about sort of where we are with conditioning and what the upcoming dates are related to student athletics, and then I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Harrison. All right, so as we all know, we've had previous conversations about this. As of July 30th, the CIAC came out with their initial plan for the fall season, right? And then following, weeks after that, starting on August 10th, there was a little bit of a pushback from, different members of, the state of Connecticut, which put pressure on one sport in particular at that time, which was football. All right, so it went back and forth for a couple of weeks, but then on August 26th, the CIAC came out after numerous meetings with the DPH and decided that we should start the plan that was initially proposed on July 30th on the 29th with some modifications. So the modifications that were made, okay, had nothing to do with any sports in particular. So every fall sport that is normally scheduled for the fall season was set to start on the 29th, which was this past Saturday, okay? So on that Saturday, the modifications that they made, the deal they made with DPH was that they would bring every sport to a low risk, no contact level for the first 3 weeks of the season. So until September 20th. So football, girls volleyball, the two sports that were definitely in question. What they've done there is they took their sports, made modification to them to ensure that they were a low risk sport. So for example, in football, there will be no contact until after September 20th. So they're responsible for coming to practice, being in cohorts of 10 every sport. So they decreased that as well. They took the cohort, went to 15, and then backtracked and went back to 10. Okay, so there is not going to be an increase until after the 20th. So every sport has to work within cohorts of 10, no contact. They have to wear masks, use a checklist before they even come to practice. So with symptoms, and coaches go through it, or they send it to them before they come to practice so that they can self-evaluate before they come in. If they have any of the symptoms on the checklist, they are not supposed to come to practice. And we've had some families already err on the side of caution and stay home for one day and then the next day return back to practice when they exhibit no symptoms whatsoever. So our families seem to be following the rules, at least for the first 5-6 days. Everybody must wear a mask when they enter the facility and when they're idle. So as they come in and they're standing and coaches are speaking with them initially before practice starts, then they must wear a mask. When they come back in at the end of practice, they must put their mask back on, and then the coaches can then once again address them in whatever manner that they feel necessary at that time. Coaches must wear a mask unless they are separated by 6 feet to 12 feet away from athletes. So most coaches wear the mask the entire time unless they're removed from a good distance. The cohorts must stay together. Like I said, those groups of 10 cannot be switched week after week. It's the 10 in each group must stay together from the 29th through the 20th. So what we're seeing is it's been a little bit difficult for sports like volleyball, right? Because they were only allowed to have 10 people inside at a given time. And they're supposed to be making cuts from their sport, which has obviously created another issue, but they're working through it because of the length of time that now we have to get ready for the season. The season is not set to begin until October 1st, the week of October 1st. So that gives some sports 4.5 weeks to get ready for the season when it's normally 2.5 weeks. Now, something that everybody has to understand, for those 3 weeks, you're only allowed to practice for 1 hour. In that 1 hour, you have 30 minutes of conditioning and 30 minutes of skill work. That's all you're allowed to do. And you must be 6 feet apart, or if you're closer, like in football, if you're working with the handoff from quarterback to running back, you must wear a mask, or the center to quarterback exchange. The quarterback must wear a mask during those activities. So there's a lot of modifications that are put in. And the reason for that is because the DPH and the CIAC will be meeting every week to make the next decision, to make the next modification. So part of that has to do with the fact they want schools to start. Once schools start, they want to see how the transition goes within the schools, having kids back in the hallways with their friends, and see if we continue keeping the infection rate low in terms of COVID-19. So this is a slow progression through the next 3 weeks. The 20th is the end point to see where we get to. And there's going to be constant conversation, and to once again use the same word that Dr. Harrison has used, it is fluid. That's the word they keep using. It is fluid. So as of right now, what I'm telling you is what the facts are. That could change tomorrow, as we all know. Actually, we have a CIAC meeting at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So as of 9:05, I may be reporting something different. Okay. So that's where we are currently with athletics. Obviously, from the 20th on through, just so you know, the 20th to the 21st to the 25th, then practices can increase to 90 minutes, 45 minutes of conditioning, 45 minutes of skill work. All right. Also, football can start having contact, but with mostly dummies, and also just grabbing each other. They can't actually tackle yet. From that point, from the 26th to the 30th, it's 2 hours regular practice, and then football is allowed to have a half hour of contact a day. Tackling drills, blocking technique, everything that goes along with that, person to person. And if we get that far, the first week of competitions then would be in October. So that is the most specific update I can give you at this time.
Thanks, Mike. And the last thing I would just say, just before I turn it back over and open it up if there are any questions from board members, is that the logic that we applied to making this decision about athletics and holding fast to the school's attendance practices, and just thinking about attendance differently when students are learning virtually. We apply that same logic to extracurricular activities as well, which is noted on the agenda. So we're not just talking athletics, but if students are interested in participating in the math club or the debate club, and they are students who are temporarily learning from home, as long as they are still in good attending on a daily basis as expected, and showing up virtually, they can still participate in that. And it's important to note that the why behind all of this is just recognizing the importance of athletics and extracurricular activities for students from a social and emotional standpoint, and building connections with others. And that was one of the biggest challenges over the last several months, students in isolation. And so to the greatest extent possible and the healthiest way to be able to have students have those more typical exchanges with each other through athletics and extracurricular activities. We want to be able to clear the path for that.
So we'll just open it up for board members. Any other questions or comments? Dr. Harrison or Mike about Penn?
Actually, no, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, if you want to go first, sure. It's fine.
Just my understanding is that there were initially under the former application of the policy, i.e. you're not, you're virtual learning, you can't participate. That was only about 20 students impacted. Is that correct?
So I'm sorry if my internet is going in and out. So as long as you can hear me, keep nodding, keep moving. We have currently 45 students. Thanks, Cheryl. We have 45 students at this moment who have chosen the temporarily learn from home option. Out of that, about 20 of them are athletes. We have other students in the hybrid model who selected hybrid, but shared with us that they selected hybrid so that they could participate in athletics. So it's possible when we reach back out to our students that some of those students who did select hybrid may switch to the temporarily learning from home option. And so we will be prepared. As you know, students can change cohorts. As far as athletic participation, those students in hybrid have been participating in the conditioning all week long, as our students who are temporarily learning from home have been participating all week long, because our attendance protocol wouldn't start until September 8th anyway. So students who want to play athletics, want to participate in athletics and our extracurriculars will be allowed to do so with this decision. And we will work to make that happen. It could make the cohorts a little unstable, but we'll make that happen.
And then I guess another follow-up question to something that Mike said. So there are students now practicing in the building, right? Girls volleyball is probably the only one I could think of. Everybody else is outside, right?
That's correct, Cheryl.
Okay.
Right now, it's just girls volleyball. Soon, we most likely will have cheerleading going as well, and possibly dance team. Staying with the same rules as volleyball, with only 10 people in a cohort being allowed inside at a given time. So we would just align cheerleading and dance with the rules from the CIAC for volleyball, because of the fact that the CIAC, even though they have competitions for cheerleading and dance, they don't recognize them and cheerleading. They don't recognize them as a sport. So therefore, they're not including them in their protocol. So we figure we'll just adapt the protocol for volleyball and apply it to those sports, since they're both indoors as well. And then if we do get to the point where football has contact, if we're there, then we will then allow cheerleading to have that as well. But if it doesn't happen, they will maintain just having a spirit team without stunting and everything that goes along with competitive cheerleading. So we're going to take it step by step. Just if I could just also add to one thing, Gina spoke about, it was really important to us that even though we didn't know what the decision would be in terms of distance learning and how it applies to extracurriculars, we thought it'd be important to allow these athletes to start on the 29th, since school wasn't going to start on the 8th until the 8th, because one, we wanted them to start to be with their teams and do what they needed to do, but also because we couldn't switch cohorts. The cohorts had to stay together for 3 weeks. We can't just allow people to come in after a week and then join a cohort. So we had to be mindful of the fact that those cohorts had to stay consistent. So we allowed them to come in, and now with this switch, they will just continue with those cohorts. So we don't have to create new cohorts, So that was really important to us, and having the start time being 29th for athletics and the start time for school, the 8th, that really allowed us that flexibility. So just so you know, that's what we decided as well.
Thank you.
Thanks. Karen, did you have a question?
Just a quick question. If teams are practicing outside, are they still limited to the 10-person cohort?
Every athletic program is limited to 10.
Okay, inside or out?
inside or out. The only difference is you're allowed outdoors to have multiple groups of 10 on the field.
I see.
Whereas for volleyball, like we have 30 girls coming out for volleyball right now, we have a 3-hour practice slot for them because they have 10, then they leave 10, then that cohort leaves 10. So we have 30 over a 3-hour period. Whereas say boys soccer say has 37 boys. They are all 37 are on the field at one time in 4 different cohorts. So they're there for 1 hour. So that's what the flexibility allows for outdoors as opposed to indoors.
Okay, thank you.
Rob?
Did other board members have questions? I've got a couple as well, but Mike, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm just looking at this a little bit more procedurally and everything. So obviously, I'm always concerned when we receive emails from parents, you know, with extreme concerns. But when we initially discussed the reopening plan, I questioned whether it was the superintendent's reopening plan and thus the full discretion of the superintendent. And as I go into that, first, I do want to thank Dr. Harrison for providing great clarity and guidance and leadership on this issue. I do appreciate that. But when we were talking about the reopening plan, and I said, if this is the superintendent's reopening plan, really the board doesn't have a role here. This is the superintendent's discretion. But if you recall, the 3 boards pushed to make a motion to endorse the superintendent's reopening plan as a way of giving their blessing to the direction that we were moving in. And so my question relates to the decision to initially preclude certain students from participating in athletics or some of these activities was due in part to the way the reopening plan was written or interpreted, or that's what I would like to better understand, because if we did it because of the way the plan is written, then I'm wondering whether the board needs to make a motion to endorse a change which would, again, allow all Barlow students enrolled in a district-approved method of learning, whether full-in, hybrid, or distance learning model, the opportunity to participate in athletics, clubs, and activities in accordance with district policies and past practices. So I think it's important to understand that. If this is full discretion of the superintendent, then I have great confidence in Dr. Harrison and his assurance that no student will be precluded from participating based on whichever model they're in. I think I'm good with that. But if we have endorsed the reopening plan, do we need a motion to revise our direction? Does that make sense?
Sorry, it does. And in the reopening plan, I don't know if we specifically call out the attendance policy in regards to the athletics or extracurricular participation. I don't know if it's specifically called out in there. I'm in favor if the board wants to endorse and provide our support behind the decision. I'm good with that. I think it's good to show unity. But I don't know if there's a particular part of the document that needs to be changed, that we need to have that as part of the motion to change the reopening plan. I also worry about that because I imagine the reopening plan is going to change quite a bit as we keep going through the weeks here. There's going to be a lot of motions we're going to have to do in special meetings as a board.
Right. Again, I'm just concerned. I want assurances for the parents, and I think I am okay if, you know, Dr. Harrison nods his head and says this is the way it is. I'm fine with that. I just, like I said, we have reversed what we initially had decided, and so I just want to make sure that we're firmly on the right path.
Sure, Gwen. Put your hand up.
I bet Mike could put his hand on that, on the minutes from that. I can't, of course, but I feel like when we made that motion, there was some language in the motion that that we endorsed the plan and that gave administration some authority to make adjustments as needed, or so I may be wrong, but I feel like there was some language in that motion that allowed for operational adjustments as needed or something. And in which case that would encompass this and, you know, anything other that needs to get sort of changed on the as we go. But I don't have the motion in front of me.
I think we did in fact discuss that at great length. I don't know that it was in the motion, but no, but it's a fair point. I just, like I said, I'm fine moving forward. I just wanted to bring that up because we did kind of endorse the plan, and if it was initially decided one way because of the plan, it's important that we endorse the decisions that our administrators are making moving forward. That's all.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's necessary or not is your call. I really don't.
Gwen, to your point, I don't remember the exact motion, language from the motion, but I do remember there being a lot of discussion about that. And I do recall there being some language in there, because at the time I was, you know, sort of watching as a spectator, I was thinking about the way that the language had been crafted in my previous district. So I remember wondering if there would be that flexibility, recognizing that these things would change over time. And just I remember the tri-board taking great kind of caution not to have to come back every time a new addendum was passed. And I think we've now had 4 or 5 addendums in the last 2 weeks. So I think that in anticipation of that, there was some language about flexibility.
I think so too.
And if I could, there was not language about participation in in activities specifically related to that temporarily learning from home, because frankly, the assumption that Mike and I were going on was that follow our attendance policy. And it was in the conversations with Dr. Harrison that we started to see this as we are still following our attendance policy and the regulations that we've created around that for our athletics and our extracurriculars. So there's not a sentence, if that's what you were, you know, concerned. There's nothing in the plan that we would have to go back and edit or amend, but the plan has been, as these addendums are coming out, it's fluid. That was your word, Dr. Harrison. It is a fluid plan.
I would be okay as chair if we wanted to put a motion in support of the direction to show board alignment with that. I have no concerns. I think that's probably a good thing to do as well. And particularly if we don't need to modify the document anyway, but just to show our support of the direction. I have no issues with that if someone wants to, or Mike, if you want to do your motion there. I do have a couple other questions. So if you want to submit your motion, you can do that and I can add it as part of the discussion. Or
So I would move that the Region 9 Board of Education allow all Barlow students enrolled in a district-approved method of learning, whether full-in, hybrid, or distance learning model, the opportunity to participate in athletics, clubs, and activities in person or remotely in accordance with district policies and past practices for participation.
Second.
Second, Gwen, thank you. All right. And before that, I do have a couple other clarifying questions that I'd like to ask. The first one, if a student is in the hybrid model and wants to now change to the remote models and is an athlete or thinking about an extracurricular activity, who would they need to reach out to talk about making that switch? Just because I know everybody's going to be back in a couple of days, and people probably want to know, who do I reach out to?
So those emails continue to come in. We had people switching from temporarily learning from home back into the hybrid and back and forth. So at this point, since school has not yet begun, they could just reach out to us administratively, or they can reach out to their counselor. Actually, I would say reach out to Paula Panos. By email is fine. They can just let us know that their cohort is switching. We will update that in Power School. When we move forward and school is open, my understanding is that there will a form parents will be completing in writing, and there's a length of time that we'll need to get the school ready if transportation is involved, and that will be articulated on the form. The only question that I had in what I just heard Mike D'Agostino saying was a district approved method of instruction. We did allow parents the option of homeschooling their child if that's what they wanted to do. However, it's my understanding, and Mike Santangeli can weigh in, that homeschooling, that's a CIAC rule. Those students would not be eligible. So I think we're only speaking about the students who are opting for the hybrid or opting for the temporarily learning from home, not any approved method, if that makes it, does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's it.
That is correct. That is a CIAC rules. You must be registered in a school, in this case, Joe Barlow, in order to be eligible to participate in athletics at the high school level. So a homeschool student wouldn't be registered at Joe Barlow, therefore not eligible.
Okay. All right, Mike,
Yeah, it does say in
No, I was
accordance
just
with district policies and past practices for participation. So it is covered in there. You know, I just wanted to make sure that it doesn't matter as long as it's a district approved method of learning, whether it's, you know, hybrid, you know, full in, or distance learning, that student would be eligible. That was.
It's just temporary distance learning, right, that we're talking about?
Well,
yes, hopefully.
Hopefully.
We're very hopeful.
Fingers crossed.
We're very hopeful, yes.
And I had a couple other questions. Mike Santangeli, if you don't mind, could, and this may have changed since the last time we talked, could you talk a little bit about what postseason in the conference and would look like? And then I have another question after that.
Well, right now, postseason. So the last date of competitions is the first week of November. So I want to say it's like November 5th is the final day that you can have a regular season competition. But they have the season running to the 20th of November. So therefore, they're leaving it open so that they could possibly put a postseason in. At this point, they are not committed to a postseason. They have built dates into the schedule, but they have not, right now, the CIAC have not committed to any postseason state competitions, regional, or even league. So they're trying to get to the season first. So they're taking it by, in phases. So they're taking it 2 weeks at a time, basically right now, working with the DPH to get to October 1st. Once they get to October 1st, then we'll go into the season and start playing regular competition games. As we all know, they're modified schedules, right? So they're less competitions than normal. It's a 6-week season. Then as they get closer, probably mid-October, their plan then is to see where we are at that time, reevaluate, and then try to make a commitment to postseason. But as of right now, there's no commitment to postseason, just dates preparing for the possibility of a postseason.
Okay. And how is conference play going to be done right now?
It's completely done in a regional format. So let's take our league, for example. The SWC is comprised of 14 member schools, made up of schools from anywhere from, say, New Milford and Pomperaug, which is in Southbury, all the way to the Stratford schools, Stratford and Bunnell. So what they've done is they basically split the league in half. There's a Northern Division and there's a Southern Division. The Southern Division only plays Southern Division schools right now. The Northern Division plays only Northern Division schools, so that we're closer to our competition. There's less travel in terms of Stratford going all the way to New Milford. That's never going to happen. So we're right now in the Southern Division, which is us, Weston, Notre Dame, Colby Cathedral, the Stratford schools, Massac, which is Monroe, and they've asked us to take a couple of the the technical schools into our league because they're so spread out. So we have Bullet Havens Tech on one end, which would be in the Southern Division, and Avid Tech will be in the Northern Division. So they've joined our league. So there's 16 schools altogether, 8 and 8 within the two. So we will stay in our regions for every single sport. Now, that's being said, some schools do change depending on the sport. Like, for example, field hockey, if we go with the Southern Division, the only schools that have field hockey are Weston, Barlow, Massac. That's it. Because the Stratford schools don't have field hockey. Bullet Haven doesn't have field hockey. Notre Dame doesn't have field hockey, nor does Colby Cathedral. So therefore, we mix that up a bit. So Bethel's coming into the Southern Division since they're close to us. We're also pulling in Brookfield as well. So we're trying to balance that way to try to keep everybody as close as possible. But depending on the sport, it could change who's in the divisions.
Mike, I would love if we had the opportunity to play Pomperaug. A good friend of mine is the principal there, and we have a little friendly rivalry. And I just want to talk trash. I'm just putting it out there. If it comes up at a meeting and you could work that in, I'd appreciate it.
I'll do my best, but I hate to tell you, you're probably going to have to wait till the winter.
Okay.
All right. And I have one other question. I wanted to see if things have changed on this one. What about spectators at any of the events, the competitions in particular?
Great question. This information will be coming out tomorrow. There will be no spectators at any events in the fall. So therefore, what we will be doing is trying to stream every home game on the NFHS network, which is the National Federation of High Schools network. We have what's called Pixelot cameras already set up, which are the cameras associated with the NFHS network. They've been installed in the lower gym as well as the stadium, but we also have competition that take place on J, which is the back competition field behind the stadium, also on the softball field. And cross country takes place up top on fields A and B, AKA the septic area. So we've purchased, we have 2 cameras, and then we purchased a third one, plus some computers, and then a special cable that the NFHS network sent us so that we could manually stream all those competitions as well. So the league has made an agreement that they would try their best to stream every one of their games at every location. If they can't, the team that's going, so the visiting team, can then bring their cameras and their setup if need be, so that everyone can see every single game.
Okay.
Yes, Gwen.
Okay, and just to clarify, so then all fall sports are a go right at the moment. Everyone that was scheduled is still happening, and we're going to try to broadcast as many, if not all of them, as we can.
Correct.
And so yeah, during competitions.
Correct.
All right. Any other questions, comments from board members, or any other clarifications? And hopefully, again, this all won't change tomorrow morning after your CIAC meeting. You have another special meeting coming up, it sounds like, anyway, over the weekend, so we can add it to the agenda. Any other questions? Otherwise, we have a motion on the floor in support of the decision that Dr. Harrison has made and put forward. So other questions. Mike, do you mind reading your motion one more time for clarity, and then we'll take a vote? You're on mute, so you need to unmute, Mike. There you go.
I got background noise here and I'm trying to spare everyone. So moved that the Region 9 Board of Education allow all Barlow students enrolled in a district-approved method of learning, whether full-in, hybrid, or distance learning model, the opportunity to participate in athletics, clubs, and activities in person or remotely in accordance with district policies and past practices for participation.
Right, and that was seconded by Gwen. Yep, okay. So all in favor, board members, if you could raise your hand. I'll just quickly, it looks like everyone, myself, Todd included. I think that's everyone except Juliet, who I think had to drop. I don't see her in the meeting anymore. So I'll say it passes unanimously 7-0 with one non-voting. Okay, so I think that then anything else on the topic on the reopening considerations for athletics and extracurricular? All right. Thank you everyone for all the information around that and for going back and looking at the reopening plan and trying to make everything equitable for the kids and get them the ability to participate in athletics and extracurricular. I think it's important that they all get that all back into their lives and into their routines here for the school year as we reopen. So thank you everyone for that. I'm going to move on then to item number 5 on the agenda, public comment. So again, members of the public, if you would like to speak, you can keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. Give your name and address, and then either raise your hand or use the hand symbol there. We'll try to find you and give you the opportunity to speak, unmute you. So anyone in the public, see anyone? All right. See anyone? All right, then we'll move on. Board member comment, any members of the board? Would you like final comments? All right. I'd say the only comment, Dr. Harrison, appreciate you being on the meeting. You, so far, everyone I've been on, you've been on, it's shorter now. So I hope we can keep that going as a trend. And I will put, let me get the name of the speaker here. I will do one shameless marketing plug for at 7:30 this evening. There is a speaker on fostering resilience during school reopening, Dr. Alicia Dodd, and it's on a Zoom meeting as well. So anybody, I think it's posted on the school site and others, email out with that. So if you can attend, please do. Have a chance to grab some dinner and then hop on to the next Zoom call. All right, so any other board member comments? Otherwise we'll wrap up. I'll look for a motion then to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
There we go. Karen, thank you. A second. Maureen, thank you. All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, that's unanimous. And we are adjourned at 6:49. Thank you everyone for your participation. Attendance, board members, look for another email when we're rescheduling for a special meeting for the MOA. All right. Thank you everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.